My friends and I were very into spooky adventures. It was a hobby that originated in our high school years. We started playing with a Ouija board at some cemetery at night, and like addicts looking for a bigger high, we moved on to exploring abandoned buildings that were supposedly haunted. With the exception of a very unsettling atmosphere in most places, we were never in any real danger. That is, until our last adventure. It had been some time since we had the chance to go on any adventure. Once we had graduated from high school, some of us moved away for college, others started families, and others simply fell off the face of the earth. A while back, I was contacted by my best friend in high school, and after catching up, he proposed a trip to a national park. Usually, this sort of trip would actually be a nice outdoor experience with friends, but Mike had specifically picked the national park for a reason: the disproportionate number of people that go missing there every year. This tidbit of information immediately made me pause. We were all, in a way, adrenaline junkies, always looking for that next scare. The difference this time was that we weren't going to explore an abandoned building or play in a graveyard. We were going to visit a place where real people can go missing and are never heard from again. Mike, being the silver-tongued devil as always, managed to convince me that we would be safe camping at the park and that a handful of our group had vast experience in the outdoors. Even though I should have made the same decision of hanging up the phone and going back to my daily mundane life, I was out on the road 2 days later and was meeting up with my friends at the park visitor center. The first thing I noticed was the immense beauty of the park. We had not even begun to explore the area, and it was already one of the most breathtaking places that I had ever laid my eyes on. The second thing I noticed was the bulletin board next to the parking lot. It was overflowing with missing person posters. While we had begun to unload all of our camping equipment, a park ranger came out of the visitor center's office. He looked tired, like he had not gotten a minute of sleep in the past week, but was trying hard to fake a friendly demeanor. "Hello everyone, what brings you to our park?" he said in a tired voice. Mike engaged him in conversation. "We're just here for a camping weekend, sir." The park ranger looked saddened at the words coming out of Mike's mouth. "Yeah, it looks that way. Listen, you folk don't look like the misinformed kind, and I know you've seen our bulletin boards. People have a tendency to go missing in this park, and we are very short on staff, being I'm the only one on shift. If you insist on camping in this area, don't go too deep into the woods and stay on the path. If you get lost out there, well, we don't have a good track record of finding nice folk like you." The park ranger didn't really stick around waiting for our reply. He went about his day and we just went about ours. Our group, composed of 6 people, 3 men and 3 women, walked for a few miles looking for a good camping spot within the woods. I was initially against being so far away from our vehicles, until Mike and one of his friends, Alex, pulled out hunting rifles from their bags. If there was anything dangerous in these woods, we would be surely safe, I thought. After a long walk, we found a spot that was perfect for our campsite, and we began setting our tents up. By nightfall, we had multiple tents around a campfire, and we began drinking a few beers and reminiscing about our old high school adventures. Around midnight, Mike had a terrible idea that he had joyfully proposed to the rest of us. "We should try and find some of those missing people out here. Some of them would be just bones by now." Nobody was drunk enough to go exploring the dark woods in search of ghosts, with the exception of Mike and his friend Alex. When the rest of our group inevitably rejected his proposal, He took his hunting rifle, his friend, and Brenda, the woman that he was dating, and drunkenly set off for a scary adventure in the woods. As they left and we could no longer hear their steps in the woods, I remembered the park ranger's warning, "Stay on the path," which they most definitely did not do. My worries were validated hours later when they had not returned to the campsite. We tried reaching them on their phones, but we had no service this deep into the woods. After some debate, we decided to head back to the visitor center and get help from the park ranger. Regardless of his previous warnings, we would have a better chance at finding our friends with his help, and not go blindly searching in the woods and inevitably get lost as well. We only took what was necessary with us, some flashlights and the other hunting rifle that Alex had left at the camp. About 30 minutes into walking back to the visitor center, we noticed something unsettling. All the wildlife around us seemed to go dead quiet. It seemed like our footsteps echoed throughout the woods for miles. From my very limited experience in nature, I could remember that when the woods went quiet, a predator was nearby. Just when I was about to consider the sinister thought, a scream broke the silence. "Help!" It sounded like Mike was crying out somewhere not too far from us. "Help me!" We started to follow the screams for help, which led us further and further away from the path. A few dozen feet deeper into the woods, we found a flickering flashlight that had been cracked and barely functioning. A few feet in front of us, we could hear Mike. "Help me." He sounded weaker this time, but something was off. His voice sounded wrong too, like somebody was trying to imitate how a human spoke, and Mike's voice at the same time. "Mike, are you hurt, buddy?" I said, concerned, but not moving an inch forward until I got a reply. "Yes, come, help." Mike said maybe 20 feet in front of us. He looked like he was on his knees. "Where are Alex and Brenda?" I asked while signaling Josh to ready the rifle that he was carrying. "They're here, we found them." I pointed my flashlight towards Mike. His body was on his knees. His head was slumped forward, and his shirt was covered in dirt and bathed in blood. I now knew that whatever was talking to us only a few feet in front of us was not Mike. He had been dead for hours. "They were so tasty." The voice stopped trying to imitate Mike. Mike's head raised up to where we could see his lifeless eyes roll to the back of his head, and somehow his dislocated jaw was moving by itself, like some sort of demonic ventriloquist in dummy show. Something large and grotesque emerged from behind Mike's corpse. It had one of its inhuman hands lodged into the back of Mike's skull, using him as a puppet. It wasted no time to drop on all fours and rush towards us. Josh fired a shot at it and missed. Before our reflexes could kick in, it had crashed into us, throwing Amber and I in different directions, but making sure that it got Josh first, as he was the biggest threat with a weapon. I landed a few feet from Amber, who had landed badly and broken her leg. I got her up and we shuffled as fast as Amber could go while the creature ripped chunks off of Josh. We made it maybe 50 meters before we were knocked to the ground, and Amber was pulled away into the dark woods, screaming all the way. I got to my feet again and sprinted faster and further than I had ever gone before. I stopped hearing Amber's wails of pain, and I knew that thing would catch up to me in a matter of moments, no matter how fast the surge of adrenaline would make me run. I fell in the darkness longer than I should. There must have been some sort of cliff that I failed to see. I landed on something hard and soft at the same time. I couldn't see a thing after I dropped my flashlight. I could only smell the terrible, putrid stench of death all around me. I could hear dozens of flies buzzing around, and it made me freeze in terror. As my vision focused in the darkness, I could see the hundreds of bodies around me. I had fallen into a mass grave. None of the corpses were complete from what I could tell, and some of them I recognized. Amber and Alex were among the piles of dead in one particular body that I could recognize as the park ranger that we had met in the morning. I had to swallow my scream as a couple more bodies were thrown into the pile. The creature was actively looking through the pile for any signs of me. I had to play dead until the creature left in defeat. I waited for what felt like an eternity until the first rays of light broke through the trees. I felt sick to my stomach as I tried crawling over the bodies and out of the pit. I cried for my friends and cried some more when my foot got stuck in one of the bodies. It was Mike, and my foot had gone through where his stomach used to be. Eventually, I crawled out of the grave and found my way back to the path that we originally used to get to our campsite. A few hours of walking and I reached the visitor center where our vehicles awaited our return. I got into my car and fell into a catatonic state for a few minutes. After I snapped out of it, I drove away as the feeling of still being watched was too overwhelming. As I did, I saw a car driving towards the visitor center. A man, a woman, and 2 young children in the back seat. I wish I could say that I stopped and warned them of the impending doom that awaited them, but I drove and I didn't look back.